Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started. And the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Sam Palmer, and Sam is a woman on a mission like me. She's a qualified nurse, a teacher, a fitness instructor, a menopause coach, amongst many other things. She's passionate about getting women in their very best shape so they can thrive through menopause and beyond. Welcome, Sam. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
So you work a lot with midlife women, and I want to know, what are the most common problems that you see?
I think the most common problem that I don't necessarily see because it's covered up is this abdominal weight gain that seems to come out of nowhere. It's not necessarily always abdominal. Sometimes it's the fourth breast that turns up under people's arms and they say, where did this come from? But so I think that's the sort of thing that people often would say is their most common problem. But actually, I think that one of the most common hidden problems, and that people don't really realize they've got it until later, is anxiety. Low-grade anxiety, a generalized state of for a variety of reasons.
It's just, I think midlife is when the shit just starts hitting the fan in all and every direction, doesn't it? And we're not prepared to cope, are we?
We're not prepared to cope with the amount of shit that hits us from all different levels. I think everybody is perfectly able to cope with a certain amount of stuff going wrong or having to adapt on a day-to-day basis. But when you're having to adapt to so many things for so many reasons, that's when we can really, really struggle.
And midlife is a perfect storm, isn't it?
Perfect storm, yes.
So much going on. So why are we so unprepared, though, for when menopause hits? Why does that happen?
I think that for all of us, there's sort of a variety of things that happen that sort of sneak up on you when you're least expecting it. One of the things that I'm sure you've heard this term, Rachel, or used it, is we are very definitely the sandwich generation. And so I think if you take perhaps the elder relatives in your family, everything is fine until it's not. But it's not a little bit not fine with older relatives. Suddenly something often quite major happens and you've suddenly got to almost change your day-to-day life to care for somebody or help somebody care for somebody else. And that takes up a hell of a lot of both brain space and physical space, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Then, depending on which camp you fall in, kids come home from university and they don't leave, or perhaps relationships break up and they come home, or perhaps some of my friends, I'm 56, but some of my friends who are sort of 51, 52, they've got still got children doing play dates. And so they've still got kids in that sort of secondary school life. Well, I remember when my kids were there, that's a hell of a lot of life going on and places to take them. So life becomes incredibly busy. I also think at that stage that many women in their careers have reached towards the top of where they're going. Perhaps their support network at work is smaller than it used to be because they are the boss, they are the person in charge. And very few people say, "How are you?" anymore because they're the boss. They don't get perhaps that support that we all got when we were a little bit younger. Coupled with the fact that we're now in the sort of bottomless Prosecco era, where it's quite a good idea to go out for brunch and have bottomless Prosecco. We're doing things in a different way than we used to. That might mean we stop exercising in the same way. Oh gosh, Rachel, we could go on and on and on, couldn't we, as to why it's the perfect storm time. But there's a lot of storms bubbling and then suddenly they all come together at the same time.
And we still don't know about it. I mean, I'm delighted about initiatives now that we're getting it on the curriculum, but women just don't know when these things start happening, when they start getting anxious and they go to the doctor and then they get prescribed antidepressants still, which is just mad, isn't it? That
Absolutely.
just drives me nuts, actually.
Absolutely. Yes. I still think, and we are both, Rachel, in the menopause world, and I naively sometimes think that there is menopause help everywhere, because in my world, certainly on social media, it's everywhere. And I think, gosh, people must be a bit bored of somebody like me saying, oh, excuse me, have you heard of the perimenopause? But I also realize that I am 0.0001% of the people on Facebook, and not everybody, surprisingly enough, is talking about menopause. Most of them are talking about Boris or Brexit or something else going on. So there's an awful lot of women out there who are still seeking help and not quite sure where to get it.
That's very interesting, because I am the same. I think, oh, surely they don't want to hear me going on about menopause again.
Yeah.
It's all she ever talks about, I'm sure they think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, because we're in the menopause bubble, aren't we? And it's an echo chamber as well.
When we had children, I was the one that was looking for the latest buggy. What sort of buggy should I have my children in? And I was aware of all the brands of buggy and pushchair and all of that. I knew everything about buggies. If you ask me now, what buggy is the best thing to put my new baby into, I wouldn't have a clue. So it's partly circumstantial to your life stage at that time, isn't it? And the friends who are around you talking or not talking about it. And everybody was happy to talk about their baby buggy, but not many people want to talk about their sore nunu, or, how everything's gone weird as they've got older. They don't want to talk about it.
I know. How do you get women to start talking about it then?
But they're sore nunu. Having a nurse's head on means that I am very open to talking about all sorts of things. And because I've been working where I live in Sevenoaks in Kent with women for 21 years, I'm fairly well known for being very open about some of these conversations. And I suppose so, certainly amongst the people who I literally used to communicate with on a week-by-week basis in my sort of fitness business, I used to open a conversation, and perhaps we'll talk about it later. As you know, I'm also a running coach, and I would say quite happily, do you dribble when you jog? Don't answer me now, but if it's something you're worried about, come and have a chat with me, because it's not necessarily a problem, but it's not quite right. So I was always very open about those sorts of conversations. But now that I've actually got my menopause business, I hope that possibly sometimes I say the things that other people are a bit too embarrassed to talk about or say. Because if we normalize some of these things that other people think are a bit, that it's just them, then people are much, much more likely to listen. And they may listen to you 4 or 5 times before they actually take action. But at least by the time they take action, they know that they're not the only one whose eyebrows is diminishing and all the hair's coming out of their chin instead. They thought it was just them. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know. I looked in the mirror this morning, I have to confess. It's like, I know I have this one hair and I can't see it at the moment. And I plucked it ages ago and it's not come back. And I keep thinking, I'm sure it's there somewhere. I know it's there somewhere. It's going to be about an inch long by the time I notice it.
And you'll probably notice it one day when you're at a restaurant and you've got your hand resting in your hand and you'll feel a prickle on the back of your hand and you'll think, there it is. There it is. It's suddenly arrived.
It gives me a lot of trauma, this hair, because if I can't see it, then I think I'm blind, and then it's actually there, but it's just hiding. It's just growing longer and longer and longer until it goes, woohoo, I'm here.
Yeah. And therein lies another point. We can't see anymore. We need glasses in the shower to find out which is the shampoo and which is the conditioner.
I've solved that one because I don't have bottles anymore. I have solid shampoo and solid conditioner, and they're just different colours. So that's easy.
I did try the solid shampoo and I looked like somebody who'd had an electric shock, so it didn't really work for me.
Oh, well, never mind. I know that, fitness and exercise is a passion of yours. Absolutely. And you're determined to get women to do, I think, more of it and to do it well. So why is it so important, especially as we get into midlife and get beyond midlife?
I think there are sort of several reasons why we need to talk about this. This isn't about looking good in a bikini on a beach. It might have been when we were younger. It might have been about how confident you felt strutting down to the walker's edge with your bottom hanging out of a bikini. But now the size of your stomach directly relates to the amount of fat that is not only on your stomach, but sitting around your heart, your vital organs. And that then directly relates to your risk of cardiac disease or metabolic disease. And so it's not good enough to say, I'm very comfortable being this size. That may be absolutely fine. If you are happy with the way you look, great. But is the way you look the sort of size that is going to prevent you from risking having a heart attack or a stroke at some point in your later life? So it directly relates to our longevity, our cognitive function, the way your brain can do what it needs to do. And this risk of heart disease, strokes and metabolic disease, this sort of combination of diabetes and all of these things. So it's not about how you look, it's about how well you're going to live.
That's brilliant, actually. You said it so clearly. But there are some of us out there who try and keep fit, and other people can get very defensive about it. You know, they will say, well, I'm older now. I am, as you said, I'm comfortable with my body. You know, I don't need to change my body. I'm comfortable with who I am now and what I look like. But as you say, that's not actually the fundamental issue, is it? It's about health, and it's about the fat that accumulates around our organs. I was just talking to my neighbour just yesterday, and I hadn't seen her in months, you know, because of COVID, and I'd just gone outside and she was out there, and she'd lost quite a lot of weight. And I said, you're looking great. And she said, well, yeah, I went to the doctor. And she's never been overweight in my view. She's quite tall, very elegant. She said the doctor had commented on how much belly fat she had and had talked to her about how dangerous it was for the fat to be accumulating there, that it wasn't more balanced around her body, it was on her belly. So she was advised by the doctor actually to, you know, really take control of this and try and sort it out. So I think that is, you know, it's so important that women appreciate that, yes, as you say, it's not about looking good, it's about health. Yeah, really fundamentally about, and it's about our long-term health.
Long-term health, yes.
Because what we set up now is what will keep us going longer term, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's why my mission is to use movement, not necessarily exercise, but movement as part of the way to help women have this optimum health in their later life.
So what do you mean by movement if it's not exercise?
I think that we have become more and more sedentary as we have got older. When you and I were young, and I'm a bit older than you, Rachel, there were 3 buttons on my television. And if I wanted to go from BBC to ITV and I wasn't really allowed to watch ITV, I had to get up off the sofa and I had to go and press the button.
I wasn't allowed to press the button.
You weren't.
My dad pressed the button.
You know, there were things, I know it sounds really stupid, but we didn't have electric windows on the cars. Everything
wound them down.
A little bit more effort. And as we've lived in an amazing, time, haven't we, where basically everything is automated for us. So we don't really have to do very much to exist. And as a result, and particularly now when we can have all of these meetings on Zoom, I could sit down at my desk, if I wasn't teaching fitness, you know, and I could talk to people all day, and I could probably on average maybe do 180 steps going up and down to the kitchen, feeding myself before I sat myself down on my sofa and I went to bed. So I think we have to start with movement, because you can't encourage somebody into exercise if they don't even enjoy moving. Movement is the very first part of it. I have this idea that I talk about movement snacks. You know, we don't have to go and walk. We ideally should walk a certain amount each day, but it doesn't have to all be done at one time. You can do 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there. It all adds up. In fact, I went and did a friend's supermarket shopping because she's got COVID on Saturday in a well-known supermarket around here. And when I went in there, it was lunchtime and it was absolutely heaving with people, not particularly safe for trying to avoid close contact with people. So I parked my trolley by the frozen pizzas and I went off with my list and I went all over the supermarket backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And it was far less efficient than going up and down the aisles, but it was a way of me trying to do it quickly, expediently, and also stay away from people. Well, actually, when I looked at my step count from doing my supermarket shop like that, it was 3 times as high. I went to a convent school, and the nuns told us, I think it was called home economics or domestic something, when you have things to go upstairs and you're tidying your house, put everything on the bottom step. And then when you go up, you take them all up at the same time. Well, now we've got to unlearn all of that. We've got to put one thing on each step, and we've got to go up and down as many times as we can. Because instead of walking the rest of the time like we used to, or grandparents used to do, we ain't doing any of that. So we've got to find ways of putting it back in. And it all starts with moving.
So important. I should say that actually, as we're talking, I'm standing up because I have a stand-up desk.
Yeah.
And under my desk, some people may have heard this already, under my desk, I have a treadmill.
Do you? Yeah.
So I'm not walking at the moment because when I do it with somebody else on the other end of the camera, they say that they feel seasick. So I have to stand still. But there have been days when I have done my entire 10,000 steps on my treadmill under my desk doing my work. Or maybe I'm watching Netflix, but I'm doing something and I'm walking and I'm moving. Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight that, you're passionate about your fitness as well and your exercise, as am I. But it's honestly absolutely true for anybody listening that in a normal working day, I find it really hard to do 10,000 steps unless that's my run day. I have to actively think about it. And so if you're starting on that journey to try and include more walking in your day and you're being challenged, that's completely normal. That's fine. Slowly increase the ways that you can find those steps, because it really doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I should say actually that, that's a very unusual circumstance, only if it's really pissing down outside. Yeah. Because normally I do go for a run in the morning.
Yeah.
So I deliberately do my steps first thing in the morning. And actually, I'm aware that I probably don't move as much as I should do the rest of the day because I think, I've done my steps, don't need to move now. Yeah. I think that's the beauty actually of my sit-stand desk, because when I'm fed up of standing, I'll sit down, and that's movement. And then I'll remember to stand up again, and that's movement. It means that I am moving a bit. I'm not quite so locked in the box. And I really do believe that sitting is the new smoking. It's sort of, it's just not good for us, is it?
And I think there's some piece of research, isn't there, that says that when you squat, your cognitive function improves for a short period of time. So I used to have a first aid training company, and I would go out and I would be doing first aid. And if I was teaching kids halfway through the first aid training session, I used to get them to stand up and do sort of 10 squats back down to their chair. And apart from anything else, it keeps them moving. But you get this sort of boost because your glutes and your legs they're big muscles, aren't they? So whoosh, you've got a big surge of oxygen or blood and oxygen to your brain. And so you're temporarily cleverer.
Wow, I did not know that. I will be squatting much more now. Oh, it's brilliant. And you mentioned that you're a runner, and yes, so I've already said I'm a runner too. But what do you love about running?
Originally, I started running to talk to my brother who was killed in a motorbike accident.
Oh.
And so I used to go out and talk to him. And I know that sounds a bit mad, but as a runner, you can probably identify with that. That was 25 years ago. What I love about running changes about every 5 years. I've done 4 or 5 marathons. The marathons went from being okay to being quite good. And what I loved about running then was probably very different each year, the achievement, the sense of meeting a goal. What I love about running now is being with my girlfriends, my running buddies, and putting the world to rights. Always saying, I know exactly where we're going, and nearly always getting a little bit lost. Sitting and having a hot chocolate generally at the end, and just literally the camaraderie. And I think, I don't know if you notice this right now too, Rachel, in these sort of COVID times, the ability to be out and free at the moment, with limited amounts of people is one of the greatest pleasures in my life. I don't care about times or distances anymore. It's just about being out with girlfriends or friends.
Yeah, it keeps me sane. The day is never as good if I haven't made the effort to go out. And sometimes, if I'm not feeling it, I'll do what's called a run walk. Yeah. And I'll probably walk as much as I run. Yeah. And other days I'll run more than I walk. But everything's doable, isn't it? It's all
absolutely. There's no rules at all.
But you're a serious runner. I did a half marathon in the year that I turned 50, but I haven't done a full marathon. I thought about it a couple of years ago, and then I started, and the training was so crazy. So I'm full of admiration for you if you've done several marathons. That's amazing.
Yeah, those days are over. I haven't got another marathon in my legs, and I haven't actually got a marathon in my head. Marathon training, a lot of it is in your head, and I've got a lot of other things in my head that I've got to do things with.
So what do you have to say about, I know a lot of people, women will say, oh, you can't run because it's bad for your knees, or other parts of the body. What do you say to people who say that?
If somebody comes to me at 50, 52, something like that, and says, Sam, I'd like to learn to run, generally I ask them, okay, what is it that you want to do? If they say to me, I want to do a marathon, why do you want to do a marathon? And they have no reason, I will nearly always, and some people might say this is wrong, try and talk them out of doing a marathon immediately. Often if people have got an emotional reason for doing a marathon because of a death, or they want to raise money or something, that's absolutely fine. They'll be very driven to that emotional reason for doing something. But a lot of the time, people want to use running as a way of maintaining or adding to their fitness. So I think there are various things we need to think about. When we are getting older, our bones start to literally crumble, don't they? And one of the ways of holding off that osteoporosis, that sort of crumbling bone thing, is any exercise with impact. And running is a perfect way for us to have an effect on your bone density, certainly in the bottom half of your body, right up to your pelvis. But it's how you start it that's so important. So my advice to somebody who says, oh, it's really bad for your knees, is go and do the research, because it's not. Okay, now, if you have a knee problem, the same as if you have any problem in your hips or your joints or your ankles, clearly starting to bounce along, doing something you've never done before, is not going to be the right way to start it. You would have to start in one way and slowly progress. So if it's just a blanket statement, it's bad for your knees, they're wrong. They're blatantly wrong. I also think it would be wrong to avoid the fact that as we get older, our decline in estrogen means that our pelvic floor isn't as rock solid as it might have been before we had children. And often women aren't aware that this may be an issue until they start some kind of higher impact exercise. So I think when I'm coaching women at running when they're older, it's a very open conversation. It's a conversation I like to have with every single woman. And if they do notice that they dribble a little bit, or they leak when they're running faster or when it's very cold, I refer them back to a women's physio, get them the training and the education they need, and then they can come back to me. So there are very few people who I would say who come to me wanting to learn to run, who I say it's a no-no for. Often people can get an awful lot of pleasure from doing the running that's right for them, maybe 30 seconds, 2 minutes with a walk break. They go out and they do 1 or 2 miles, and that's all they want to do. And good luck to them. It's fantastic.
And before we hit record, you were talking about you going out walking and listening to podcasts. And I would say, listen to the podcast while you're running or walking or whatever you're doing. That's what I do. I love, and I learn so much from listening to podcasts while I'm running. It's such a joyful experience for me.
It's lovely. It's really good.
So how can we stop exercise feeling like a chore?
I think the best exercise is the one that you love. If you like dancing, dance. If you like walking with friends, go walking with friends. If you want to lift weights, lift weights. So exercise will only stop feeling like a chore if it's something that you enjoy when you get there. I also have, and this may be a bit of an edgy thing to say, I have a pet hate, and that is when you turn up to an exercise class and you find yourself standing next door to some beautiful 35-year-old male with a naked chest. If you two are in the same class, then one of you is in the wrong class. And I think that exercise is going to be so much nicer if you are doing an exercise that is designed for you. So that's what I pride myself on. I will push people, not so that they can't walk for a week afterwards, but for the right duration of time, using the right type of exercises that are really good for them right now, and not so much that they hate it so much they'll never come back to me or anybody else ever again.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm a little bit of a sucker for punishment, because when I could go to my yoga class, I would go to some quite intense yoga classes, and there were some very, very, very buff people in there, and I'm convinced I was the oldest woman there most of the time, if not the oldest person there, and I didn't feel very comfortable, actually, although I enjoyed the class. But I think it also depends on your sort of level, doesn't it? But if you're starting out, just don't do that.
I mean, if anybody says, right, we're going to do a warm-up and we're going to start by doing 50 star jumps, walk out. Who needs to do a star jump when we're 56? There are plenty of other ways of getting your heart rate up and warming up without doing that. We don't need to do that, but we do need to exercise.
So you have quite a lot of online classes that you're doing, haven't you? And I know that one is HIIT, and I don't know very much about HIIT classes. So tell us about HIIT classes and why. I know you think these are pretty good for women of our age, don't you? So tell us about
What's really important is that we need to raise our heart rate when we're exercising. It needs to be raised to a level where people really are having to work quite hard to talk. Okay. We also need to be lifting weights, some kind of resistance, because if you can't lift your luggage into the overhead locker, when those planes start flying again, you won't be going to be able to put your luggage up there. So, that alone is important, because there isn't always going to be somebody there to put your luggage in the overhead locker for you. We need to have our heart rates up. We need to be doing some strength and resistance stuff. And we need to maintain a kind of suppleness around our bodies, both for external suppleness and internal suppleness. So my HIIT 45 class is so called because it's roughly designed for women age 45 and over. It is 45 minutes. Note that wasn't 60 minutes or an hour and a half or whatever, because we don't need endurance exercise anymore. There's a thing called, you've probably heard of it, Rachel, steady state exercise. When you're doing something and you could actually keep going for 3 hours. Well, what good is that doing? Okay, we're not puffing. We've got to keep going for hours and hours and hours. Who's having fun there? Things need to be short and sharp. So it's high intensity interval training that I do. Those 45 minutes generally are split into 15-minute blocks. We do some cardio, we do some strength, and then I always include a little bit of restorative exercise at the end. Yoga style, Pilates style, ballet style. It's a bit of a background of mine, but anything basically just to calm our frazzled nerves back down again. So that's one of my popular classes. And another one that I do that's even shorter is abs, arms and arse. We've found that a lot of people don't have time to go to the gym anymore. They don't have time to go to those classes anymore. And there was a great desire for a short class that worked on the areas that they wanted to work on, that ticked the right boxes, but it's not really cardio. It's just the strength stuff. So they're my two most popular classes for midlife women.
Cool. And are most women surprised when they start doing them? How do they, is it quite a new thing for them, or does it fit with what they might have been doing before?
I think a lot of women are very surprised at the efficacy of such a short class. They often email me the day after I get one of those emails that says, "What have you done to my bottom?" But at the time, I think this is the thing that is so vital. If you're not hating it while you're there and you're noticing the effects afterwards, then something is right. If you're hating it while you're there and you don't really notice anything afterwards, then something's wrong. So it's about getting that balance right, isn't it? And what I've really noticed actually since lockdown, and I don't know when people will be listening to this, but people have found more time to do a very short class, but regularly. And people have said to me, my mum fell over in the bath and I was able to lift her up. I tripped down the stairs and I put my hand out. I didn't break my wrist. Little things, but they've noticed the spillover into their day-to-day life of being stronger. which is I managed to buy, one lady said to me, a 15 kilo bag of Epsom salts, because I told her to buy Epsom salts. I took it upstairs, 15 kilos. That's no mean feat if you think about people holding hand weights that may only be 3 kilos. So they're noticing the benefits spilling over into their day-to-day life. And after all, that's why we're doing it. As we said before, this is about health.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I have a husband and I have a son who's occasionally around. The son's not around very much. But in the past, I would certainly allow my husband to pick things up or put the luggage up on the rack or, help me with my bag on the tube. Yeah. And actually, I've stopped doing that. Yeah. I want to carry it myself. And I see that as my little weight training exercise by carrying my bag. And I used to always use a wheelie bag to go to the supermarket. And I've stopped doing that as well. I'm taking bags that I can carry. Yeah. And then I might, as I'm walking down the road, if I'm feeling really masochistic, I might actually be trying to lift the bags as I'm walking to get another little bit of exercise as I walk. So as I said, we can do these things and they do make such a huge impact on us overall. I think it's like losing weight as well. I've recently lost 10 pounds because I had let the weight climb up. And I'm running so much better being lighter and I feel better all round. I've got more energy overall because I've lost those extra 10 pounds. And if you think of it in terms of bags of sugar, that's quite a lot of bags of sugar.
And then you think about how that looks, as we said, inside around your heart. Your risk of heart disease has gone down quite considerably with 10 pounds.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, so it's really, and also I think when you're doing the exercise, there's less weight going on all the bits of you that are supporting you to do the exercise. So that's better as well, isn't it? It's all good.
I heard a very interesting phrase actually earlier this week from a lady that I've a bit, in some ways, my business idol, a lady called Jenny Burrell. I don't know if you know Burrell Education, and here we are talking on a podcast. So there we are. This lady is inspirational. Often with pre and postnatal young women, but also women of the third age. And she talked about wearing your wine. And I thought that was really interesting. It's wine o'clock. You get used to having a glass of wine at a certain time of day. But there comes a stage in our lives where you end up literally wearing that wine.
That's very interesting. Because I am counting calories at the moment to lose the weight. I was doing that. And, I can't afford the calories from the wine.
Yeah, that's right, because
it is a lot of calories. I've got to run a long way to cover a glass of wine.
Yeah, that's right.
Darn it. I know. There's so many things to think about, aren't there, when we get to midlife, I think. But I find it interesting because I'm curious. I want to learn. I'm interested about how I'm changing and what my body is changing, but also incredibly appreciative of my body that is still carrying me around and allowing me to do all this stuff. It's a remarkable thing we have, I reckon.
We're very lucky to be able to have this perfect storm because it means we're here.
I agree. I think that's one of the positive things about menopause, actually. It's like this natural marker in life, isn't it? It's sort of saying, okay, now's the time to have a really good think about everything. Let's just throw all cards up in the air and see where they land and work it all out. But health is paramount, absolutely.
And in fact, your business, Magnificent Midlife, and mine, Midlife Makeover, I think because both of us identify that the midlife isn't just about your menopause. It's about your makeup. It's about your clothes. It could be about relationships. It's about families. It's about, no, I am not going to do that anymore. It is literally chucking it all up in the air and thinking, right now, how does this sit for the next 40, 45, 50 maybe years? What are we going to do?
So finally, what is your best advice for a woman in midlife she's just struggling with menopause, struggling with life? What would you say to her?
I think I would say to find somebody who is educated with up-to-date information, who you can identify with, and learn as much from that one person or a variety of people as you can, and then start slowly making one change and then add another one and another one. I'm well known for saying to my ladies, I'm never going to have one of those yoga voices that's all calm, that reduces your anxiety and makes you finish thinking, oh, that was lovely. You're going to end up from my classes thinking, whoa, what happened there? And so sometimes people are drawn to people who are the sort of the yoga tribes, and that's great. Sometimes people are drawn to people who are smiley and quite loud and quite full on like me. Other times people are drawn to the academics and they just want to sit and read and learn and have statistics. We are all very different, but find that person or those people who inspire you, listen to them and think, right, okay, what can I change? And don't be afraid to start with something really tiny like drinking 2 litres of water a day, because even something like that has far-reaching effects in a whole load of things around our midlife, be it your skin, your bladder, your gut, your weight, your hunger, all of those things. And then it's almost like a cascade effect. But I think the one thing that I would say is really important is being accountable to somebody who's helping you means you're much, much more likely to do it. There are all sorts of, certainly from a fitness perspective, there are so many YouTube videos out there that you could go and follow, but nobody's saying, watch those knees. What's happening to your head there? Are you holding your breath? Are you doing this? And so I think being accountable and having somebody who can actually interact with you is a really good idea.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.